Where's the ball? Get it. Just going through some of your questions and comments from yesterday's video, and there are loads, so thank you so much, and some really, really good ones as well. Probably some videos will come out of these questions. Should we go for a walk? Yeah? Come on, should we go for a walk? Okay. Yes, okay, go on. Just a minute, okay. Okay, come on then. So, news being reported today, I think it started in Germany, but the AMUS site in Germany have reported that they know that before the Austrian Grand Prix, Red Bull Racing are about to announce that they have signed or agreed to sign a deal with Honda to supply power units for the 2019 and 2020 seasons. What do we think of that? Now, if this is indeed true, and of course it's not confirmed at this stage, but I have to say the guys at AMUS are generally pretty good at this kind of thing. They're generally a reliable source, so I'm inclined to believe that there is some truth in it. We'll have to wait and see for sure though. There's two ways of looking at the decision though, isn't there? On one hand, you know, Red Bull Racing have a choice of two power units. They've got the Renault that they currently have, that they know, that they've not been overly happy with for the last few years. And they've got the Honda, which they've been monitoring in the back of their Toro Rosso sister team, of course. But equally has definitely not been one of the strongest power units on the grid. Probably not the finest two options. If you could take everything available in Formula One, they are probably the least two options, the least two favoured options that they would love to have. However, both Renault, which has been very closely monitored of course by Red Bull, and Honda have definitely made giant leaps forward from where they were over the last couple of years. And I think it's fair to say that the performance levels of all of the power unit manufacturers are getting closer. They're starting to converge. This is what happens when you keep regulations stable for a period of time. The slower ones tend to catch up, and the law of diminishing returns means the ones at the front have less room to improve. So that's inevitable. They will start to close the gap anyway, and over the next couple of years, or certainly over the next year, I would expect that to increase. Now this deal is only for 2019 and 2020, obviously, because in 2021 everything changes. New power units, new power unit suppliers. Potentially, someone like Aston Martin could be a preferred choice for Red Bull Racing. But if this decision has been made, if Red Bull Racing do indeed go with Honda, I have to say I can understand it. I think it's being made for the same reasons that McLaren made that decision a few years ago. And actually, I still stand by the fact that the reasoning behind McLaren's decision a few years back were all good. They were justified. It was a worthwhile decision to make. To be the sort of works team, if you like, which is what you would be if you run with Honda, to have the sole focus on you as a team, there's a lot to be said for that, a huge amount. That is not what Red Bull Racing will have, currently have, or will have in the future with Renault, because not only is there now McLaren as an engine partner, but Renault themselves have their own teams. Sit down, good boys. Now, there is a caveat to that, because when I say that this deal is a 2-year deal, 2019 and 2020, and I talk about the engine suppliers or the power unit suppliers getting closer in terms of performance, and that law of diminishing returns at the front, meaning those guys can't pull away any further. Got to caveat that by saying that yes, 2019 you can kind of see the development continuing, and the guys that are, the Honda and the Renault, both potentially starting to improve. But actually beyond that, in 2020, you can envisage a time when there'll actually be almost no development from those power units. Come on. Because 2020 will be the very last year of this current engine formula. And so no manufacturer is going to be putting any time, effort or money into developing their power unit throughout that season. So in reality, the decision that Red Bull have to make here is based on the performance levels that Renault and Honda are at right now and where they think they will get to over the course of 2019 and into the beginning of 2020. Because it's not really fair to say they've got 2 more years of development to try and catch up with the Mercedes and the Ferrari. So they've obviously, if this decision is indeed proved to be correct and they've taken Honda, they've got to have been convinced by some of the things that they've seen through the partnership with Toro Rosso and some of the things that they have been told or promised that are coming in the near future. Well, how many times were McLaren promised various things by Honda that just failed to materialise? Way too often. And I'm not saying that McLaren can lay, all of the blame at Honda's door, because clearly they can't. But McLaren was certainly promised things that Honda just could not deliver on, and that was one of the biggest issues that they had. So Red Bull are going to have to consider all of those things. But look, if you're Red Bull Racing, you know what you've got with the Renault power unit. You know it very, very well. They've raced with it for years. They've had that relationship for years. Come on, you two. They've had that relationship for years. They know exactly what to expect. They know how the two companies work together. And so, if you want to get a different result, which they do, they want to be challenging for championships, you've got to change something. You've got to do something differently. If you do the same thing over and over again, you'll highly likely get more or less the same result. And although they've been close, they've had race victories, they have not been close to winning a championship for many, many years now. Now, on the face of it, the Honda is not necessarily going to give them that opportunity, but what it will do is give them an opportunity to shape the direction, to some extent, of the development of that Honda. They will, as I said, be the sole focus of that Honda power unit development process, and I think that power or that influence that Red Bull Racing can have in that relationship is pretty key. Now, the other thing that Honda will need to consider in all of this is that Red Bull, I guess a little bit like McLaren in recent times, have not been that great at working together as a team with their engine supplier. And I mean that in the sort of PR sense. I.e. Red Bull have been very, very quick to put the blame at Renault's door when things haven't gone well. They've constantly been talking about them in the media, saying they need more performance from them. Not really been overly complimentary, despite winning 4 world champions with them with Sebastian Vettel. McLaren equally were not particularly complimentary about Honda when things weren't going very well, and I guess on some levels you can understand all that. But my point here is that Honda have been burned by McLaren. The way that the relationship with McLaren went, the way that it ended, it's largely down to their own doing, of course, but in a PR sense, the amount of time and effort and money that Honda have ploughed into their Formula One project and the return that they've got from it in terms of positive PR has been terrible. They've got hardly any, if any, positive PR out of this whole campaign. They need to consider that going into a relationship with Red Bull, of course. I guess Red Bull need to feel like they are the most important customer of whatever engine supplier they have, and under Renault, I guess they don't feel that. One question I think that this will be interesting to put to you and to sort of see how it pans out is, what will this decision do to Daniel Ricciardo's decision of whether he stays or leaves Red Bull Racing? Daniel Ricciardo will, of course, have had to be convinced. If this has been the decision, he will have had to been convinced that it's a good decision for the future and a decision that will give him the opportunity to challenge for a world title. Can Honda do that? Can Honda convince Daniel Ricciardo that they can give him a power unit capable of challenging the Ferraris and the Mercedes? It's a tough sell, isn't it? On the face of it right now, absolutely no way they can. I'm not sure. I reckon, my feeling is that if Red Bull Racing rather do announce this partnership with Honda, for me, that's not what Daniel Ricciardo wants for his future. Can Red Bull Racing convince him that whatever comes next after Honda is enough, will be the ticket, you know, the Adrian Newey car, perhaps an Aston Martin power unit? Can that be the ticket to that elusive world championship that he so desperately needs and wants for his career? Really, really interesting question. Lots going on behind the scenes right now, and so many different aspects to this kind of decision. This is not a simple, straightforward one for Red Bull Racing or for Daniel Ricciardo or even for Honda. Anyway, I would love to know what you think, of course. Those are my opinions on it. I guess mixed opinions and more questions than answers, I guess, at this stage. But what do you think? Right decision or wrong decision, if indeed this is what's been done? Red Bull Racing taking Honda power units for 19 and 20. Would you have done the same if you were Christian Horner?